I have a beautiful wife. She's the love of my life. And when I discovered that she's been talking to her ex, okay, no big deal. I think I can get over this. They're just friends. Nothing happened. Right? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself because there's something I need to tell you. It's a secret, but I guess I'll let you know.
I'm not a marriage counselor, nor am I a relationship expert, but one thing I know for sure is that there's really just no formula for a successful marriage. You could have all the money in the world, or have good looks, successful career as I do, but still end up in a miserable marriage. I speak with all clarity because I'm currently in my third marriage. I'm a software engineer, and I'm doing pretty well in my field. I'm the first son and child of my parents, and I've got two younger brothers, who are married with children. My first marriage happened at 24 years of age when I was recently graduated from college. The marriage packed up just 6 months after, and was because my wife cheated. My parents were understanding and even encouraged me to give love another chance. I remarried after about a year, and this time around, my wife was just the direct opposite of what she had portrayed herself to be. She informed me after our marriage that she was not willing to have kids. I was not in support of her decision, and the marriage ended rather quickly. The moment I signed the divorce papers for my second failed marriage, I informed my parents of my marital status, and they were not happy about it. They kept insisting that it was ruining the family name, and that I needed to get my life together. To make matters worse, all my younger siblings were married and doing well, which only made me feel like more of a failure. It wasn't long before my parents summoned me to their home to discuss my situation. They suggested that I go to therapy as they believed that I had some deep-seated issues that needed to be addressed. I tried explaining to them that the two marriages which had initially failed were not my fault, but they weren't willing to excuse me. They said if my younger siblings could keep their home, then it was clear something's wrong with me. Although I was initially resistant, I eventually gave in and signed up for therapy. My therapist's name was Ashley, and she was a lady who I quickly became comfortable with. She had a calm and soothing demeanor, which put me at ease. Over time, I began to open up to her about my life, my past relationships, and even my fears. As our therapy sessions continued, I started to develop feelings for Ashley. I felt that she understood me in a way that nobody else had. It was as though we had a connection that went beyond the therapy room. One day, I decided to take a chance and asked her out. I was nervous, but I felt confident that she would say yes. However, to my surprise, she turned me down. She explained that it was against her profession's code of ethics to date her clients. She claimed that she could actually lose her license for doing so, and I was not willing to take no for an answer, to be honest, so I persisted. But Ashley stood firm in her decision not to date me. She explained that she cared about me as her client and that it would be unethical for her to pursue a relationship with me. Well, I was devastated by her rejection. I'd never felt such a strong connection with someone before, and I could not bear the thought of losing her. Although it hurt, I knew deep down that she was right. We continued with our therapy sessions, but things we never, well, they were just never the same between us again. The chemistry we once had was gradually being replaced by a sense of awkwardness and tension. Maybe she felt I was emotionally unstable as I just had a messy divorce, and was trying to get into a relationship as a means to heal. Time went by, and I could not see her the way she saw me. I wanted something more, but I was not willing to put her job in jeopardy, as that would be selfish of me. So I went back to her office to fire her as my therapist. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I felt like it was my only option. When I got there, Ashley was with a client, and she was surprised to see me, as our next session was not till 2 days. I simply told her in the presence of her clients that she's fired. She was understandably surprised, and she appealed to her client to excuse us before proceeding to ask me what had she done wrong. Well, I explained to her that I did it because I want to date her. Ashley asked me to leave her office, and I did not hear from her again until about a week later when she surprisingly paid me a visit at my home, and she agreed to go out with me. We began dating shortly after. Ashley and I, we had a whirlwind romance, and 6 months later I proposed to her. I was thrilled when she said yes, and we started planning our wedding immediately. I announced to my parents that I found love for the third time, and I was about to get married. Their reaction was epic. They felt like it was too soon. They noted that I was supposed to be undergoing therapy rather than planning a third marriage. I informed them that my therapy had ended for the best as I was getting married to, my therapist. My parents were taken aback, just like anybody would. They opinioned that getting married to my therapist was not a good idea. But I made them see the light. They saw things from my perspective. Ashley was someone who understood me better than my exes ever did. She knew the circumstances surrounding my divorce, and, she even understood it was not my fault in any way. Besides, a therapist who helped people heal would know how to best keep a home. In the end, my parents gave their consent. They, however, warned that my marriage to Ashley lasted this time around. So, we finally had our wedding, and I had wanted something simple as I didn't think getting married for the third time was something I should blow a trumpet about. But Ashley talked me into going for something elaborate. So we spared no expense, and we had a lavish ceremony that was streamed live and posted on Ashley's social media account for all of our friends and family to see. As well as being a therapist, Ashley was also a relationship expert. She held a weekly podcast with her sister Maeve, where they talked about issues that bordered on relationships. It was a hit, and they had a loyal following of fans who eagerly listened to their advice. However, things took a turn when Ashley's ex-boyfriend resurfaced. I was a little uneasy about it at first, but Ashley assured me that they were just friends. So I trusted her, and I didn't want to be the kind of husband who would dictate who she could be and could not be friends with. But to my surprise, Ashley's ex ended up featured on her podcast with her sister. They talked about their past relationship and how they were able to remain friends despite the breakup. It was an interesting topic. Their fans loved it. As time went on, I started to notice that Ashley was spending more and more time with her ex. They would often go out for coffee or lunch, and sometimes they would even go out at night. I didn't want to be jealous or controlling, but I couldn't help but feel uneasy about this situation. Despite this, I tried to be supportive of Ashley and her friendship with her ex. I knew that it was important for her to have a support system outside of our marriage, and I didn't want to be the reason why she couldn't have that. As the weeks went on, Ashley's relationship with her ex seemed to deepen. They would talk on the phone for hours, and sometimes they would even go on trips together. I started to feel like I was losing her, and I didn't know what to do, so one day, I decided to confront Ashley about her relationship with her ex. I opened up to her about being jealous of the time she was spending with her ex, but she just reassured me that it was all for the cam. She wanted the views. She later suggested that I and her ex both be featured on her weekly podcast, where we talked about how we felt being around the same woman that we both were intimate with and how we're maturely handling the situation. Well, it would have made an interesting episode, I thought. I blatantly refused. It was painful enough that her ex was still present in her life. I wasn't willing to pretend to her fans that I'm just A-okay with it, because I wasn't. Ashley did not press the issue any further. 6 months after I've refused to feature on my wife's podcast, he was diagnosed with a heart condition. The news was made public to my wife's followers. They sympathized for him. He managed the situation for a while, but it got to a point where he needed surgical operations done on his heart. The cost of the surgery was, upwards of $500,000. And my wife soon demanded that I covered the entire cost of the treatment. This we're talking about is $500,000. I could not do that. I obviously sympathized with him and all, but footing the entire bill was something I could not afford. I told my wife Ashley that I couldn't do that, and what she was asking of, well, that was the first time I saw a part of her that I had never seen since we began dating down to that point in our marriage. I never thought that helping someone out of a difficult situation would lead to such a huge problem. My wife's suggestion to help her ex with the expensive surgery was noble, but the amount of money required is simply too much. I didn't want to seem heartless, so I offered to contribute some money, but my wife just kept insisting, oh no, I should pay the full amount. She said it's important for her and her followers to see that I held nothing against her ex-boyfriend by footing the bill. I'd be showing that I was supportive of their friendship. I was not against their friendship, though it occasionally did get me jealous. I simply could not pay $500,000 just to prove a point. My finances would be crippled, and it would take me years and years to recover. I've had 2 failed marriages, and I didn't want to make the same mistake again by being reckless with my money. Recently, my wife even threatened to divorce me if I didn't pay the full amount. I couldn't believe the words that just came out of my wife's mouth. Divorce? Just because I refused to pay for your ex-boyfriend's surgery? I couldn't help but feel frustrated and angry at the whole situation, and honestly, I was shocked at her reaction. I thought that we had a strong bond, and that our love was based on more than just money. I never imagined that she would be willing to end our marriage over this financial issue. My mind raced as I thought about the different ways to handle the situation. On one hand, I loved my wife and didn't want to lose her. On the other hand, I could not justify paying such a large sum of money just to prove a point to her followers. As the days went by, my wife's behavior became increasingly erratic. She would pick fights over the smallest things, and our once loving relationship began to deteriorate. It was as if she was willing to sacrifice our marriage just to prove a point to her followers. It was surprising that my wife, who was a therapist and a relationship expert, was acting this way. I tried to talk to her, but every time I brought up the issue, she would shut me down and say that I did not care about her or her ex. Her mind was made up. She was determined to get her way, and I could not help but feel trapped in the situation, unsure of what even to do next. As the days turned into weeks, I began to realize that the situation was bigger than just me and my wife. It was as if we were living in a social media bubble, where our every move was being watched and judged by others. I could not help but feel like we have lost sight of what was truly important in life. Our love and commitment to each other should have been enough, but instead, Ashley was willing to put it all on the line for the sake of likes and views. I was feeling incredibly stressed about the situation with my wife and her ex. With the way she was going about the whole thing, one would wonder if I was just a platonic relationship, or if she was using the whole thing as a camouflage to hide their secret love life. Well, after having a series of arguments with my wife, I knew I needed to confide in somebody, but I knew I could not turn to any member of my family, not my siblings, and certainly not my parents. They would see me as a lost cause because I was so sure this time my marriage to Ashley was going to last. They could draw conclusions that if I could not keep a successful relationship with a, relationship expert, then something was wrong with me 100%, and not the previous women that I've been married to. I was left with just one option, and that was turning to my sister-in-law, Maeve. She had always been supportive of me, and I hoped that she could help me navigate this complicated situation. Besides, she was not in the whole relations thing with my wife, so she was the best person to make her see her wrong in the matter. Maeve was shocked when I told her that my wife had asked me to pay the entirety of the hospital bill for her ex-boyfriend's surgery. She listened patiently as I explained the situation and put the pressure my wife was putting on me to pay for everything. Maeve seemed to understand my concerns and promised to talk to her sister about it. A few days later, Maeve talked to my wife about the situation. However, my wife had warned Maeve to stay out of our marriage and told her that I was not being supportive enough. Her idea of being, quote, supportive enough meant I had to foot the entire surgery bill of her ex when it came down to the detriment. I was disappointed to hear this, but I knew I could not force my wife to see things my way. I was still contemplating paying half of the bill when I got the news this morning that my wife's ex had passed away. I was at the office when I got the news, and I did feel really bad. He may have been the ex of my wife, but he was still a human being. There were no hard feelings. I knew my wife was hurt, and I just had to be there for her. Regardless of how disappointed I was with her for the way that she had been treating me lately, I reached out to her. But she didn't even answer the phone. I decided to go over to her office where she spent most of her time recording her podcast with her sister. When I got there, I saw her sitting on the floor with her head bowed down crying. Her sister Maeve was beside her consoling her, and she was honestly inconsolable. It was almost as if it was her husband that had died. I comforted my wife and we got home a few hours ago. She's currently taking a nap after having cried herself to sleep. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So this story was a deep one. I have 5 multiple updates that all spanned over the course of a few months to up to a year. And things are about to get pretty wild. So grab your favorite beverage and let's go ahead and hop in update number 1. If you guys are new to the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button because I post videos every single day and I hope to see you in the next one. Here is update number 1. I'm what you call a married bachelor. And this is because my wife Ashley's been out of the house for some time. The issue tension between my wife and I have escalated after the death of her ex-boyfriend. As the news of my wife's ex passing away due to the lack of funds for medical bills spread, my wife's followers took it as an opportunity to absolutely attack me. They bombarded my social media with messages blaming me for the unfortunate incident. My wife, who was devastated by the news, refused to defend me, as she also blamed me for the death of her ex-boyfriend. She had inspired her followers to come after me by telling them that I was so immature towards her, that I was unwilling to fund the medical bill for her ex even though I have the money. She left out the part where she had turned down my offer to pay part of the bill. The accusation was outrageous. How was I to blame for the death of her ex? I did not inflict any illness on him, and neither did I kill him. To make matters worse, my wife prohibited me from attending his funeral. Well, I was shocked that she could do that to me. I heard she gave a speech during the funeral rites, and she accorded his death to the wickedness of men. It was obviously clear to her followers that I was the wicked one being referred to. Despite all the challenges we face in our relationship, I simply never imagined that she would treat me with such disrespect. I was disrespected, yeah, but it didn't make me harbor for once the thought of ending our marriage. Au the contraire, I was determined to save it. My wife left the house immediately after her ex was laid to rest, and though I tried to stop her, she just insisted that she needs space. I respect her decision and gave her the space she needed. It was tough not knowing how she was doing, but I knew that it was necessary. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on our relationship. I wondered where it all went wrong. Was it because I refused to pay for her ex-boyfriend's medical bills? Or was it something else entirely? I needed answers. I decided yesterday to pay a visit to my sister-in-law, Maeve. My wife had equally cut my Eve off from her as she felt she was supporting me. I hoped that she could just shed some light on the situation, maybe. Well, my Eve was surprised to see me, but she welcomed me warmly, like usual, and we sat down to talk. I poured my heart out to that woman. I told her how much I love my wife, how I want to make things right between us. My Eve listened patiently, and when I was done, she told me that my wife was going through a tough time. Losing her ex-boyfriend had taken a big toll on her, and she just needs some time to heal. My Eve also told me that my wife was struggling to come to terms with her ex's death and was finding it hard to forgive me. So I left my Eve's house feeling hopeful. At least now I knew what was going on with my wife, and I made a mental note to be patient and to give her all the time she needs to heal. I knew that winning her back would not be easy, but I was willing to do whatever it took. Update number 2, a few weeks later. Hey guys, it's been a few weeks since my wife Ashley left me, and things are yet to get better. I thought I would update, but my parents recently got the news of what was going on between my wife and me, and they came to see me just to remind me that I was shaming the family name for failing to hold my 3rd marriage in a row. They were furious with me and did not hesitate to let me know it, and as soon as they walked in, they started berating me for my behavior, saying, "How could you let things get to this point, son?" My dad bellowed, pacing back and forth in the living room, saying, "Why must you be the one to put us to shame all the time?" Saying mother while she shook her head in disgust. "What kind of men are you anyways? You're supposed to be a provider, a protector, and you can't provide and protect your wife?" I just let them say all they wanted to say before proceeding to explain what really happened. I told them about how Ashley had gone ahead to inform her followers that I'd promised to foot the entire bill for her ex, simply because she wanted to put up an impression that I held no hard feelings towards him. My parents went cold as I made them see things from my point of view. After I was done speaking, they both kept quiet for a while before my father finally spoke up. He noted, "Yeah, there's an issue in marriage and nobody's perfect." He continued saying that patience was needed by a spouse in marriage, and there were times one would need to apologize to his spouse, even though he was not at fault. After Dad was done admonishing me, he demanded that I do everything in my power to save the marriage and make things right with Ashley. They empathetically told me that a 3rd divorce in less than 5 years did not speak well about me in any way. At that point, I didn't even know where Ashley was. She disappeared, not even with a word. And I was left feeling helpless and alone. So, I decided to reach out to her sister Maeve for help. Maeve was sympathetic to my plight and agreed to help me find Ashley. So we spent weeks searching for her, following any lead that we could find, but we never managed to track her down. It was as if she's vanished in the thin air off the face of the earth. I sent a series of messages to her Facebook account, apologizing profusely for all that was going on between us, but she just ignored them. It was clear that she did not want to be found, and the worst part is that her followers are still trolling me simply because they still think I'm the villain in the story. I'm currently frustrated in my search for Ashley. I think I should just, take a break. Update number 3. Well, this is an update I didn't see coming. As Maeve and I spent time together, I found myself growing increasingly attracted to her. I mean, we've been through so much together while searching for Ashley, and our shared experiences have created a bond between us that was hard to ignore. But I knew that crossing that line would definitely be a mistake. Maeve was Ashley's sister, and I didn't want to do anything to jeopardize our relationship for the chance of finding Ashley and saving the marriage. However, as the days turned into weeks and Ashley still had not returned, I found myself struggling to resist the temptation of Maeve. She's beautiful, smart, funny, and being around her made me forget about all my day's problems. But just as I started to give up in my desires, here comes Ashley. To my surprise, she was unapologetic about everything that happened. At first, I tried to overlook her behavior, and my parents had warned me against divorcing for the third time, and I didn't want to give up on my marriage without a fight. Wow. But the more time I spent with Ashley, the more I realized that my feelings for her changed. I no longer loved her like I used to. Instead, I found myself anticipating the moments I would spend with my Eve. It was as confusing, time for me, and I didn't know what I wanted, and I didn't know how to make things right. And to make matters worse, Ashley's followers were absolutely ripping me apart now for the death of her ex. I called Ashley and begged her to tell her followers that I was innocent. But she refused. Instead, she demanded that I feature on her weekly podcast and apologize to her followers for letting them down. Can you believe that? I was furious. Ashley's attitude had already ruined my image. And rather than find ways to salvage the situation, she's bent on adding salt to injury. It's just about her and her followers. This is the height of it, and I stormed out of the house in anger, and I'm currently updating this from a bar. And I don't think I would return home anytime soon. Ashley is most definitely the last person I want to see right now. Update number 4. So, from my last update, I'd stormed out of my house after Ashley had made an outrageous demand to further humiliate me. And I was at a bar pondering about what happened and what to do. I finally left the bar, and it was the place I knew I would find solace. My Eve's home. I arrived at her house, and she was shocked to see me at her doorstep unannounced and half drunk. After she welcomed me, I explained to her what had transpired, and as usual, she offered warmth, but insisted that she was not going to mingle in my affairs with Ashley. She probably felt I wanted her speaking with Ashley to patch things up between us, but that was far from it. Time went by, but I didn't want to leave. I had nowhere to go. I could not go back home, so I didn't want to set my eyes on Ashley, so I asked my Eve if she could let me temporarily stay at her place. She declined my request that her sister Ashley would perceive it in a different light, and she would not be willing to get into a fight with her. I had to check into a hotel and intended to use the time to clear my head and figure out what I wanted for my future. I had no idea what laid ahead, but I was determined to take control of my life moving forward, and I was going to do this by getting a divorce. As the days passed, I spent my time researching divorce lawyers, gathering evidence for my case, and I knew it was not going to be easy, but I was ready for the fight, for the rights of my reputation. When I finally filed for divorce, it was both liberating and terrifying. I knew that it would be the end of this chapter in my life, but I also knew that it was necessary. My wife had hurt me beyond repair, and I could not continue to live in such a toxic environment. I kept the whole divorce thing from my parents, as I knew they would not be happy, and would even try to convince me to reconcile with my wife. They may not see it as it is, too late for that, but the damage had been done, and I could not go back to the way things were. It wasn't easy, but I managed to stay focused and determined throughout the divorce proceedings. I knew I had a strong case, and I was ready to fight for my right. The thought of finally being able to move on, start fresh, just kept me going. Even on the toughest days, I would be finalizing the divorce process next week. I can't wait to be a free man again. Update 5. Final update by OP. I'm a free man. After weeks of court proceedings, I finally got the divorce I've been seeking from Ashley. It was a relief to finally put an end to a toxic relationship. However, the end of that relationship allowed me to pursue something that's been on my mind for quite some time. My Eve, my ex-wife's sister, and I'd grown close during the time we spent together looking for Ashley. We had to exercise strong restraint not to act on the chemistry that had been building up between us. Now that I was a free man, I decided it's time to see where things could go with Maeve. At first, Maeve was hesitant to pursue a relationship with me. She was worried about the fallout with her sister and the possible backlash from our family and friends. However, I convinced her that her sister had indirectly given us her blessing, stating that it was okay to date an ex-sibling. Finally, Maeve and I started dating, and our relationship quickly blossomed. We spent most of our time together, going on dates, exploring new places, and our connection was absolutely undeniable. And it wasn't long before Maeve got pregnant. We decided to keep our relationship and Maeve's pregnancy a secret from our family and friends. We didn't want to deal with the judgment and scrutiny that came with dating an ex's sibling. Instead, we got married in secret, just the two of us, and a few close friends who were sworn to secrecy. I did not bother inviting my parents. There's no way that they would attend anyways. Not my 4th wedding ceremony in less than 5 years. They're still recovering from the pain which my divorce has caused them. I only informed them after I've remarried. However, secrets have a way of leaving somebody's mouth. And Ashley eventually found out about our marriage. She was furious and even visited Maeve and me at her home to vent her frustration, but I stood my ground, reminding her that she had previously stated that it was okay to date an ex-sibling. I knew that she could not publicly criticize us without making herself a hypocrite. She left in shame and tears. Despite the drama with Ashley, Maeve and I were happy together. We had each other and our beautiful baby on the way. I was excited to start this new chapter of my life with her and build a future together. However, as happy as we are, I can't help but feel a sense of guilt about how everything played out. I know that our relationship had caused hurt and damage to those around us, and I can't help but wonder if it's worth it or not. Nonetheless, I am committed to Maeve, and I know that I have to do everything in my power to make our relationship work, as this is the first relationship that'll be producing me a child.
Okay, that story was pretty crazy. So OP has gone through numerous wives. But the third one, I have to say, that was a pretty ridiculous request. $500,000? Yeah, I get it. It's a sad thing that happened, but forcing somebody to pay that amount of money is a big deal. I would like to hear from you guys. What position do you stand on it? Do you think that OP should 100% have paid for the medical expenses? Or do you think, hey, it's not really his place to have to do that? Drop your comments down below. Let's talk about it in the comment section. That's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I read stories every single day and animate them. If you want to find different types of stories, you can look at my other channels, which you can find in the description below. Thanks once again. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow.